Welcome back to another episode of Feel Good with Carly. Hi, you guys. Happy hump day. If you're listening to this, episodes go up on Wednesday. And it's been a minute since I have uploaded. If you're watching this on YouTube, you know it's because this is kind of a new setup. I'm not going to lie, you guys, I was not feeling super confident about my setup. The mics that I had, I was just running with what I had. Okay. So the mics that I had, my husband had used them in his finance podcast, but they were just like the kind of mics that you clip onto your shirt. And listening back to my episodes, like driving around town and in my car, I was just like, I don't love this audio. It wasn't feeling like something I was super proud of. I didn't like the really wide shot, and I wasn't feeling super confident. So I ordered a setup. I have an interface, I have a microphone, and I'm feeling really good about this. And I'm hoping that it sounds better. Now I feel like I need to do like a sounding voice. If you're listening to this, let me know. Can you guys tell the difference with this setup versus my last setup? The last episode we did, I had my teenager, Cooper. He was on the show, and we talked about high school. And that episode was all over the place. We filmed it late at night. He was drinking a soda. There was a lot of noise. It's probably really hard for you guys to listen to. Him and I both were saying like a lot, and we were watching back on that episode and laughing. And it kind of was like this lesson for me. I wanted to instantly like run and delete that episode, redo it, delete all the other episodes I've done, which I've only done 4, I want to say 3, 4, maybe this is my 5th. I'm losing track at this point. And I was totally like, you know what? If you can't look back at your cringe worthy self and just learn anything from your cringe worthy self, like how are you ever going to get better? You know what I'm saying? So I'm using those episodes as a point of like onward and upward. I want to get better. I really believe in what I'm doing here. I really believe in connecting with you guys and that we have something to talk about here on Feel Good with Carly. And I just want to lean into the cringe. In fact, there's 2 reviews on Apple. If you guys listen to this podcast on Apple, there's only 2 reviews. One of them is really nice and one of them not very nice. And that's okay. You know what? It was okay because I'm like, you know what? I kind of agree with him. He was saying that it's hard to follow along with my thought process, which same, buddy, same. I have the worst ADHD. And he was saying that the audio wasn't very good. So I really took that to heart and I was like, okay, how can I take the good criticism and the bad criticism and not let it go too far, right? But how can I learn and improve? And I feel like I'm doing that. So I'm excited to see where we're going to be in a year. In a year, I'm manifesting this and I'm going to put it out there. In a year from now, I'm going to have my own podcast studio. Okay? We're manifesting it. I'm a big dreamer and we're manifesting that. So, happy Wednesday, you guys. That's kind of been where I've been at. There were some weeks that I skipped because I was getting podcast equipment and honestly just like giving myself grace. Being a mom of 5, it's really hard. Okay? And we could talk about that. That could be a whole other episode of just really finding the balance in motherhood versus your career versus keeping your house clean and finding friendship time and sexy time with your husband and all the things. And it really truly just comes down to balance and making an appointment with yourself and sticking with it because I'm really good at appointments. Like when I have a Botox appointment or if I have an eyebrow appointment, I am not missing those appointments because they're important to me and I feel good after I go to them. So I'm like, why is my work or my career or my dreams any different? And I think that it's good for your kids and your spouse to see you respecting yourself, respecting your time, respecting the things that are important to you, and showing up. So that's a little tidbit on that. I'm going to take a sip of my peach Alani. I'm loving the peach Alani. It is so, I don't know, there's just something about it's refreshing, it's crisp. Alani, when you listen to this, not if you listen to this, when you listen to this, why is it so good? And why can't we collab? You guys have like the best collaborations and I have a good flavor in mind. So Alani, let's all tag them. Let's reach out. Contact your girl. She's ready. Okay. Let me move my mic really quickly. I'm hoping you didn't hear that. I wanted to talk about something that I actually opened up on my Instagram about last week. And something that I've realized about myself, I don't know if any of you can relate. If you can, please tell me, is I, for as outgoing as I am and for as unfiltered as I can be, I have a really hard time opening up and feeling, and I realized this today. It just like was this light bulb moment. I have a really hard time opening up and confronting my feelings and actually talking about them. And I think if I'm being really self aware, it's because there's something inside of me that doesn't feel safe in sharing how I really feel. And I'm like, okay, where does that come from? Um, and so like even when there's like something with my husband and I that are like is like a little bit off. Like for example, this morning, we're just gonna really go into it, me and Anna did. I swear to you, I had one more Alani in the fridge and I went to go get it out this morning and it wasn't there. And he swears up and down that he did not drink my Alani. And Cooper, my son, also this morning was like, "Hey, can I have your last Alani in the fridge?" And I was like, "Yeah, you can have it." And then he came back and he's like, "Oh, it's not there." So I texted my husband and I was like, "Hey, will you get me an Alani at the gas station? Because mysteriously my last Alani is gone. It's missing. Someone drank it." And he was like, "I'll get you one," but it wasn't me. And then all of a sudden, I'm like annoyed in my brain. And rather than having the courage to go to him and being like, "Hey, I really want to open this up for conversation." It's so silly. It's the silliest, like most minimal thing. It's an Alani. It's dollars at the gas station. But I feel like you're not being honest with me because maybe you feel afraid to tell me the truth. Like, am I not making you feel safe to like be able to tell me the truth because you're afraid of my reaction? So then I go down this like mental spiral in my brain where I'm like, okay, it's my fault people can't tell me the truth because maybe I'm too confrontational and they don't want to bring the truth to me. So he told me a lie. And I'm literally like having all these self spiraling conversations in my head about being and feeling safe enough to show up and just talk about my feelings. And I've realized that I really bottle things up and I don't like to rock the boat. I don't like to say how I'm feeling. And when Jackson's my husband, when we get in a fight, it's really hard for me to own my feelings and be like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. And I think it's from years of before I was married, it's from years of being in relationships where we didn't know how to fight healthy. I was in a really abusive, toxic relationship where every thought I had that was pressing against the situation was like a big, huge blowout fight. And also in my family, I love my family dearly. But we all know how nurture versus nature, how you were raised plays a big part in who you end up being in society. And my family, we would get in these really big blow up fights and everyone would just go to their room, let the air clear, and then the next day everything was fine. No one said they're sorry. No one revisited the fight and we never combed through the actual issues. It was just like, we're never going to talk about this again. And so I think like that perfect combination of really never understanding like how important it is to sit down, dissect a situation, own your feelings, respectfully let someone else own their feelings and talk about like where you're at is like this perfect storm of me bottling things up and holding things in because I'm so afraid of feeling safe to talk about my feelings and feeling safe to confront people. That's, I think, the biggest word that's standing out to me right now is confronting someone. And I think in my mind, my brain thinks like confronting someone is this fight. It's like a knockout, drag down, like we're going to fight when it doesn't have to be that way. It can be very peaceful. It can be done in a very healthy way. But for some reason in my brain, it's been registered as don't show up, don't stand out, don't go against the grain, don't say how you feel, or it's going to feel really unsafe for you. And you're going to regret everything you say. You're going to be putting yourself out there. And so, I don't know. I just would challenge you today, if you are like me in that sense, to take a step back and to realize that it is okay for you to bring up your feelings and that you can do it in a safe way. And if you guys have more tips on that, I would love for you to leave it down in the comments below, or if you can relate to that. That's one of the thoughts that I was having. It's not the main point of the show, but that was one thing that I thought about this morning. And I thought also to myself, when it comes to podcasting, you really need to be in the mood to talk and to open up. And here's where I'm connecting the two stories is because of that little tiff with my husband, it wasn't even a fight. We haven't even talked about it. But because in my mind I like started to spiral about this silly Alani, and like bless his heart, he went to the gas station and he brought me a peach Alani. I love him. Um, I was, starting to self spiral in my brain, and I thought to myself, like, well, podcasting is really hard because for me, it is this opportunity to open up and to feel safe to talk about my feelings. And I think that the hardest thing for me with, YouTube and my career online is I haven't always felt safe to actually show up and just be myself because of, years of what we talked about before, of I don't want to go against the grain. I don't want to cause confrontation. I don't want to rock the boat. But what I'm hoping to do here on the podcast is to really just have like this way of just like showing up as friends. And Renee Brown calls it your shitty first draft, where you're just discussing things. It's not like we're landing on anything here. It's not like we're settling on anything definite. It's just like having a conversation where you're allowed to maybe go down these different avenues and pathways of thinking and just like throwing it out there. It's not even going to be the best idea. It's not always going to be advice. It's not always going to be like by the book or law. It's just going to be this way for us to talk and feel safe and to feel good, right? That's the name of the show, is Feel Good with Carly. To feel good and to feel safe about having these conversations that maybe we've wanted to have, but we just don't know where's a good place to have them, right? We're just pushing creative thinking. We're pushing this idea of like really critical thinking and going maybe against the grain of where you would normally side, and just really like, I really like those thought-provoking conversations where you sit down with someone and you can have completely different views and ideas, but because they're so healthy and self-aware and you're wanting to do the same thing, you're able to talk about really intense, diverse topics, subjects. Maybe it doesn't always have to be intense. Maybe it could be something as trivial as like, Botox, which is something you guys really want to talk about on the show. But I just think having this safe place of feeling like, you know what, I can ask the question that's burning deep down in my soul and there's no judgment. Okay. That's the biggest thing, is there is no judgment here. We can say maybe like our inner unhinged thoughts. And that's kind of my personality, is like I say things and I'll read someone's body reaction. I'm like, oh, should I have not said that? Because I don't have a filter. It's broken. So I'm trying to lead you down this path of how my brain works. The Alani being with my husband sparked this self-spiraling conversation I was having in my head about feeling afraid to confront him and ask him about the Alani, that led me to, well, why am I feeling that way? And why is it hard for me to truly just like confront my emotions and feelings in general? And then that led me to, well, I need to do my podcast today. That's on my to-do list, but I'm not in the mood. I don't feel like talking. I don't feel like podcasting. I'm like, well, you know what? It's not always about feeling the feeling, because in life's not always perfect. You don't always want to feel like it. And I'm like, when it comes to podcasting, it is very much a sense of like feeling brave enough to be open and want to chat. And when I get in these moods and I'm wanting to shut down and hold things in, I don't want a podcast, because like that's like how podcasters become really good, is they're really great about opening up and putting things out there. So anyways, are you guys following me down this rabbit hole, this like where my thoughts were going and how fast they got me there? And I was really proud of this self-discovery because it actually was a really good exercise for me today and a good reminder for myself to be like, hey, it is okay to confront your feelings. You're in a safe relationship where you can do that. You're in a safe environment. And then I was like, that was another light bulb that was like, that's what I want my podcast to be. I want my podcast to be a safe place for you and for I just to go down self-discovery paths of topics, conversations, situations, whatever it may be, right? Is that all the same thing in the end? Where we feel safe enough to confront these topics and these ideas, and we're not landing on anything infinitely or for forever. We're not saying that this is how it has to be here. We're just friends having a conversation, an unhinged conversation where our inner thoughts come out, and we throw it around there, right? Because there are some people that I want to have on the show where I know I don't agree with some things that they do or believe in. And I'm like, it would just be so good just to like pick their brain and to try to relate to where someone's coming from, even if you don't agree with them. And so anyways, that's what landed me on this thought path. We're 15 minutes into the show and I'm like, that's what I need to share my podcast today, because that's like literally that whole thought process train was like encompassing the feeling of what I want you to feel like when you listen to Feel Good with Carly and why you tune in to my podcast. So to touch, wow, words are hard. What distracted me is my middle daughter. My first daughter stayed home from school today. She said she wasn't feeling good, but I think she's feeling fine. But she's upstairs with my toddler, and I heard them, and they said they would be fine. And I said, "Come and get me if anything tragic happens." But don't call CPS on me. They're fine. They're upstairs. But I just heard them running around. So if you hear that noise, I am a mom of five trying to run a life and a business here. You get it. Anyways, so section one, that was part one of today's podcast. Part two of today's podcast that I really wanted to talk about was something that I did bring up on Instagram last week. And it was this vulnerability feeling of feeling like me as a human being. I'm 37 years old. I'm going to turn 38 in June. And realizing that there's so much inner in my inner workings and inner beliefs, we'll say that, my inner beliefs where I feel like, and I wanted to bring this up because when I opened up the floor on Instagram and I was sharing how I was feeling, I was so blown away with how many of you also feel this way. And that to me was like a green flag of this is something that we need to talk about. This is something that we need to dive in. So many of my inner beliefs want to be categorized into good and into bad. Okay, and we're going to get into that of, okay, if I do this, then I am good, then I am accepted, then people will see me in this light, and that is good. Okay, if I don't do this, then I am bad, people won't respect me, they're going to think this way of me, and then that is bad. And I was really like having this moment of like, I really want to start working with a therapist on doing some like some deep deconstruction work of these inner beliefs and thoughts, and just really try to hone in and be self-aware of like, what do I really believe? And what do I really feel like in my heart is, and in my soul is this inner compass that leads me to make choices because I feel it in my soul that it is the right thing to do, right? So, an easy topic to bring up and to compare this to is religion. I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it is hard. It is really hard for me to talk about religion because I don't ever want to come across as like I'm trying to be a spokesperson for the church, or that I'm trying to be like the face of my faith, or that I'm trying to put myself out there as like this advocate for my religion. Not that I'm not advocating for my religion. I know that for me personally, like I don't feel confident putting myself in this position to talk about the church, or I haven't felt confident because I don't want to be like I don't want to be viewed as like I do it perfectly, and I don't. And that's what led me to this thought process of like, I am so tired of feeling like my choices have to be put into these categories of this makes me good and this makes me bad. And I think organized religion can put that pressure on people. And I think that it's good, right? It's really good. It can be a good thing because it can help you develop this like morale and this sense of like making good choices. But there's so many intrinsic, deep inner workings in me that I'm like, I don't think that this makes me a bad person. But according to the values and to the beliefs of the faith I belong to, it's something that we shouldn't do. And it's just been really hard for me in my brain because it's like, well, you shouldn't steal candy, but like, does that really make you a bad person if you steal a candy bar? Okay, just think about that for a second. Please do not go out and steal a candy bar today. I will send you one. But like having that, that working inside of my head, like, what if we stripped away this idea of like things need to be filed into shoe boxes of good and bad. And they're just actually choices that we make. And then there are consequences that come from those choices. Okay. That was one thought that I started like having that started like working out through me. But then what my brain loves to do is to play devil's advocate and argue the opposite. And then I instantly was like, well, Carly, if you go out and you murder somebody, that's bad. That makes you a bad person. I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see that. That's like an extreme comparison, right? So how do we get to this place in our life where truly we're not just blindly following someone or a belief system because we are so afraid of showing up as our authentic self, making our own self appointed decisions or our self-owned decisions because we're like, well, if internally I don't feel good about doing this because it goes against how the church would want me to choose. I hope I'm making sense. I'm going to give you an example. So in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we have something called the Word of Wisdom. Now, I'm not going to get this perfectly. I'm not going to quote the doctrine perfectly. I'm only speaking from my experience. I'm only speaking from what I have learned as a member of the church for 37 years. So the Word of Wisdom is basically it's basically a not a value, but it's like a discretional suggestion that we should follow to truly find health within our bodies on earth. So the Word of Wisdom came about from being prayed for over men spitting tobacco and drinking alcohol is my remembrance. Okay. In the 1800s, 1900s, men and women were spitting tobacco, smoking cigars, smoking cigarettes. They were drinking whiskey. And one of the wives of the prophet said, hey, I don't think that this can actually be healthy. We should pray about this. And, there's a lot of doctrine and there's a lot of church history that goes back and forth on like when and how it was established. But that was like the seed that was planted that kind of took us down this road into, okay, well, let's really think about, if our bodies are temples of God and they are gifts from our Heavenly Father. And I'm not going to try to make this like a big religious, like, this is how you should believe. I'm just trying to take you down this thought path with me and using an example that led me here, which is the Word of Wisdom. If our bodies are gifts from our Heavenly Father, right, and they were toned and paid for with the blood of Jesus Christ, we should treat those bodies with respect. We should treat those bodies with the utmost care and protection and love because they are a gift. Being on this earth in our earthly bodies is a gift. How imperfect they are or were given to us or whatever we face on earth, it's still a gift from God. And so the Word of Wisdom was put in place to honor that, to make sure that what we're ingesting into our bodies is healthy, that it's reflecting in God's name, that we're not getting addicted to things that would tear our spirit body from our physical body. So the belief is that when we die, our physical body goes in the earth and our spirit body leaves that physical body into the earth and our spirit goes into heaven, we move on, right? The belief is that our spiritual bodies will still have the same cravings and the same earthly desires if we haven't conquered them when we have moved on. And so to be addicted to sugar or pornography or alcohol or caffeine or red meat or shopping is going against the Word of Wisdom because what we're trying to do is truly find inner self health and peace for our spiritual and our physical bodies so that both of those things in unison can honor our Heavenly Father and all give glory back to Him. So in the Word of Wisdom specifically, it says tea and coffee. And here's where my thought is. I never drank coffee until I was in college. And then it was like my friends were all getting these like frappuccinos from Starbucks. And I was told growing up in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you can't have coffee or tea. It's against the Word of Wisdom. And there was always a lot of confusion around that because a lot of people think Mormons can't drink caffeine, and that's not true. We can have caffeine. So I specifically remember asking my bishop, like, why can't we have coffee if I can have Coke and Mountain Dew and Diet Coke. Why can't I have coffee? And he had given me a really great lesson about the tannic acid in coffee and how the tannic acid actually is just really bad for your insides. It's like if you've ever seen the inside of a coffee pot, it's really stained, it's really dark, it's really hard to get clean. And that's really bad for our insides. It's also very addictive. A lot of people have to start their day with coffee, right? And how that just really isn't good for our spirit to be prisoner to something we're addicted to. And I really loved that. But I'm like, okay, but what if you do it in moderation, right? What if you have a coffee or a frappuccino in college and you don't really know what you're having? Like, are you going against the word of wisdom? And so for the longest time, I have felt this guilt that I fell in love with coffee in college and that I had a frappuccino. And that when the holiday cups come out, I love getting a peppermint white mocha. Skinny, skinny, please, not with all the sugar. And that sometimes I like having a cold brew. And it took me down this thought path of like putting myself in like, well, I must be bad because I'm drinking Starbucks, but I still go to church on Sunday. And that's against the word of wisdom, according to, our spiritual body. But I don't do it excessively. Like I could quit coffee right now, no questions asked. I would think about it, but I would not have like actual withdrawals if we're being completely honest. Would I 100% have physical and emotional and spiritual withdrawals if I stopped drinking Diet Coke? 1,000%. And so for me, the word of wisdom has always been so confusing in the sense of like, okay, so Mormons, it's not caffeine, it's satanic acid, and I get that. Alcohol, obviously, like that's a whole other show, but it's toxic. It's actual poison for our bodies. A lot of bad choices come from alcohol. Can't come from coffee. So I'm like going back and forth in my head. And I'm not even trying to be like a buffet believer, right? Where you get to pick and choose down the line of like what you want to believe. I truly am just like having this moment where I'm like, Heavenly Father, like I don't feel bad for drinking Starbucks, but I've been conditioned to think that I should feel bad. And according to like the word of wisdom and what's stated in there and what others would think of me if they saw me, like it according is like all putting me down this like pointing me to this direction of like that is bad. And so I really just had this like self-awakening moment where and I'm not you guys my I'm not trying to like baptize any of you or I'm not trying to lead any of you away, right? I'm just having this conversation with a friend that's thought provoking and that can maybe deepen your understanding for like why you make choices. But it really did led me down this path of like, okay, I really am addicted to Diet Coke. Like it really is a problem. Like I have soda every single day and I need to have it. I've tried to quit and it's made me really sad and I felt like sick, truly sick, like headaches, withdrawals. So why am I so hung up on this like good and bad shoebox living of where I want to put my actions into good? This is bad. This is good. This is bad. And I'm like, filing actions and deeds away when I know that I am a good person and I try really hard. And why am I making certain decisions based off of the fear of losing respect from somebody because they don't agree with my actions? And it really was just like this, like, idea of like how many of us are living our lives according to, set religion aside, maybe it's not even religious, right? But how many of us are living our lives according to this internal navigational system with these inner voices that are not even ours? And we're just so afraid of confronting our feelings, of being able to be vulnerable to share our feelings, of also not disappointing our parents the way that we live our lives because we don't want our mom or dad to confront us and get mad at us and we let them down and lose their respect. But how many of us are just really not even truly authentically showing up as like who we want to be and what we want to do because of this inner belief system where doing this makes me good, doing this makes me bad? Like, let's flip the tables here. Like, are you going to church because you're thinking that makes you a good person, but really you're not a good person because you're not kind? You don't give back. You don't hold the door for people. You cut people off in traffic, whatever makes you good or bad. I don't know. I just really like having this thought provoking, self aware conversation so that we can all just kind of check in with ourselves. And I always think about my podcast and who I'm talking to and who may be listening. And I always think like, if I could just go back, I'm going to cry. If I could just go back and look at myself when I'm like 20, 21 years old and I'm just like super lost and I'm feeling like a piece of shit person, like truly thinking that I'm just the scum of the earth because this is a whole other episode we can get into, but I wasn't living according to the choices that would put me in the good shoebox. I so badly wish I could just hug her and be like, you know what? You have worth. You are a good person and you have an inner voice that you can follow and that you can listen to. And it's going to rub people the wrong way. It's going to ruffle feathers. Your parents may not agree with you, but we should never dim down that inner voice or turn that inner voice down because of the fear that others may think that that is bad or puts us in the shoebox of losing their respect. And I just think that what clarity we would all feel and what path we would all find that's our true path that's going to lead us where we're supposed to be here on this earth, if we started honoring that inner voice of like, okay, why am I making this decision? Am I showing up and actually going to church or the gym? I know this is a lot about religion. I wasn't going to make it all about religion. It's just easy for me to use that as a comparison. But am I getting up every single day and getting out of bed and reading my self-help book because I really want to do that? And my inner voice is like, this is a good thing for you. You should do this. Or is it because I've been told that I should do that and that that is good? Can you guys see what I'm trying to like outline here and how important that is? And I just wish, wouldn't life be so great if we could all go back and just tell our younger selves what we needed to hear? But I also kind of sometimes feel like that's toxic. So let's learn from it right now if you're listening. Okay, today's a new day. It's a new page. It's a new chapter. Let's make a promise to ourselves. Okay? Let's sit with those thoughts and that inner voice that we're having, and let's honor what we're hearing. And this is like real woo-woo, hippie. And if this is your first time listening to my podcast, you're like, this lady, she's in it. She's in the feels. This is not always going to be the case, right? We're going to have silly episodes where we talk about fun things, but this has just been burning a hole in my head. And I just know that someone needs to hear it and I need to get this message out there. But let's make a promise this week before our next episode. Let's promise to do some self-aware work where we sit with the why, okay? Why am I showing up? Why am I making these decisions? And what or who is telling me that if I do this, then this is the reward, good or bad? And let's just sit with that and see what happens. I have felt some freedom truly opening inside my chest and my head when I've leaned into this idea that it's okay if they don't agree, right? If you guys know Mel Robbins, you're familiar with her let them theory. I know that has been transformative for a lot of people. It's been transformative for me. And I've lived so many years of my life just wanting to be respected and accepted and liked and wanting to show up in a way where that's how I'm seen. And it makes me sick to think how many times I just turned down my inner voice and was afraid to honor like who I really am because I was just trying to please other people. And I was just trying to fit into the good shoebox where people would respect me because I'm doing the good actions on the outside that are reading good. When really I know that like God has given every single one of us a spirit and a conscience. Thank you, Timothy. Oh wait, what's the cricket's name? Cricket. Timothy here. Is it Timothy? Someone help me on Disney. Pinocchio. Come on. Can you follow my brain patterns here? But we've all been born. We all came to this earth with our own voice. And I just get so worried, like, where I need to end up. What is my goal here? Where is my big mission if I'm not fully being myself and showing up as myself? And if I can't exemplify that for my children or for myself, let's start with me first, right? How are my children going to do that? Because we actually were at dinner the other night with some of our friends that we have friends, weird, that I love this couple so much. He's Jewish, she's Catholic. They have this most beautiful life. They have the most beautiful way of thinking. And I'm like, maybe I should have them on my podcast because the way that they just think and how they raise their kids, I'm like, I want to be more like that. But they were talking about morale versus like morality, right? And just having like that own your own inner like compass. And I told him, I said, the number one thing that I want to leave with my kids is I want them to feel so confident in following their inner voice that they live their lives so authentic to what they feel is right that it does make me disappointed, or it does like go against like some of my thought patterns and like what I want for them, because then I will know that they're following their own path. Like I just want my kids to feel so supported in doing and being and showing up for who they want to be, that it is brave and it is courageous, and they truly feel like they're following their own inner compass, and they're not doing things because they're like, well, mom will think I'm good if I do this, or this is what dad wished for me. Like I want to look at my kids and be like, this is your path because you chose this and you truly believe in it. And we're just having this such a beautiful conversation at dinner about, how we can raise kids that will be that way. And it just felt full circle from that thought that I had that I shared on Instagram about like doing that inner work of deconstructing, like putting myself into these good and bad categories so that I truly can show up and just follow my own inner voice and know like what I have to offer and how I can help other people find that. And that's my challenge for you guys this week. That's what I want to sit with on this episode. There were a lot of deep thoughts. I didn't know I was going to cry, but we're already 37 minutes into this podcast, and I just hope that whoever out there is listening, that this message finds you and that it resonates with you and that it makes you feel seen, and that we all can just strip away this idea of like, I'm a good person versus I'm a bad person. And it's like, I'm going to make choices according to what honors my own internal voice. And hopefully, by doing that, we just exercise like this way of showing up that's just more authentic, because I think that that's like just in general what we're all needing more of, authenticity. And doesn't it just feel good? Doesn't it feel good like when you have a day where you just felt like you got to be yourself? I just love that. And I think that we just need more of that in our marriages, in our relationships. We need that more in our friendships where we're not afraid to be like, hey, I don't agree with that. Like, let's talk about this. And we do that deep conversation, deep work where we all like grow and learn a little bit. I don't know. Maybe this is really heavy for today on a Wednesday when I was like cheering. I was like, it's hump day. But that's my thought for this week. And I hope that it has helped some of you. And if you're listening on Spotify or on Apple, I would so appreciate your feedback, good or bad. Truthfully, I'm not going to delete. We talked about this at the beginning of the episode. I wanted to delete that really mean comment from that guy, but I was like, you know what? I can learn from it. And maybe he was just being honest. Maybe he wasn't like saying it wasn't mean. So my ask for you though is just to leave a review. And if this helped you, share it on your social media, tag me. I would love to see the faces of those of you who are watching or listening. You can find this podcast on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, Feel Good with Carly, or at Carly Styles is actually still my YouTube handle. I was afraid to change it. It just felt really final. Or on Spotify and Apple. And we are headed to Vegas this weekend. Lenny is going to be dancing at the Velocity Dance Competition. She's doing her solo, so send good vibes, send prayers for her that she does well and feels at peace with her dancing abilities. She's such a little star. It's fun to watch her, and it'll be fun. We're taking almost our entire family. My oldest has to stay back. He has baseball, and if you're a baseball player, you don't get spring break. So it's kind of hard because my heart will be in two places over spring break. But I'm excited to get to Vegas and have some warmth. It freaking snowed 2 feet of snow here in Idaho. And I'm usually a supporter of the snow, but I'm starting to feel like, all right, it's almost spring break. We need less snow and more sun. So we will see you guys next week. I haven't decided on what I want to talk about. If you know me, you know I'm very in the moment, very in my feels, like let's go off of the cuff. But a lot of you gave me some good feedback on some topics you want me to cover. So always leave ideas and suggestions down below because I do read them, I do see them, and it is really helpful and it always sparks a new idea. Anyways, I love you guys. I hope this helped you. Like my new nails, I just did them today. And we'll see you guys next week on Feel Good with Carly, the place where you can feel safe to be your most unhinged self and ask those thought-provoking questions. And let's just dive deep into it and feel better together. Love you guys. See you soon.